Ruben is co-founder and CTO and COO of Quivers. And so sort of his line that he gave us was empowering brands to connect with retailers for the benefit of consumers. Now you need to think about that for a moment, because there's a few clashes in here: retailers, brands, for the good of the consumer. And then someone tried to explain to me the topic of intent casting, which is what Ruben is going to talk to us about. And I didn't get it the first time, but I think he can do a good job explaining it to us. And it's really an example of the kind of digital disruption that we're talking about when we're talking traditional business models and supply chains, and the ways in which creative entrepreneurs with the right digital technology can ask serious questions of incumbent businesses and try and rethink what we believe to be sort of the truth or truisms and established ways of doing business, and just asking new questions and thinking, you know, is there not a different way of doing things? And so we're happy to have you, Ruben. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I guess, first of all, everybody put down Minecraft. This is not the time for that. My name is Ruben Martin, and as was explained, I'm the co-founder of Quivers, which is a business connecting businesses together and more effectively connecting those businesses with their customers. It's an honor for me to be here today to discuss a topic that's near and dear to my heart, and really at the core of what we're doing at Quivers. Intent casting is not a specific technology or system, but rather it's a business approach. It's one that's focused on truly empowering the customer and creating a customer-driven world. The best way that I can explain intent casting is by giving you an example, and actually one that hopefully reels you in to what intent casting is all about. That was supposed to be a little joke there, anyway. How many of you know Crush? That's good, because I didn't either until 3 weeks ago. But on a sunny afternoon in LA, Crush became my hero. Let me tell you the story. My two coworkers and I were in the southern part of LA. We had packed the day full of meetings. And we were just finishing one meeting when we were headed up north to Santa Monica. As we were headed up, one of my coworkers received a call for another meeting at the same time as the Santa Monica meeting. It was an opportunity we couldn't resist, so we decided, let's split up. My two coworkers would go to the new meeting, and I would head north to Santa Monica. The only issue was we only had one car. So to solve that problem, one of my coworkers suggested I hitchhike. And again, for those of you who haven't been to LA, hitchhiking across LA is probably not the best idea, although you wouldn't have to listen to me today, more than likely. So the other option was to get a taxi. We were parked in a parking lot along the highway, had no idea where we were at, had no idea of any taxi car companies, what their numbers were, or even how long it would take to get there. What we did know was where we needed to go, and we did know that we had a problem. The idea of Uber came up. Now, I had heard of Uber to get me from A to B. It was an app that I could easily download, so I decided to do that. I put in my destination, and I cast that intent into the Uber world. The fact that I had to go from that parking lot along the highway to my destination in Santa Monica, I didn't mind what type of car, and I knew I had to go now. That was my intent. The Uber world, within a few seconds, figured out how to meet my intent, how to solve my problem. To the astonishment of my coworkers and I, only a few minutes later, a car pulled in behind us. The license plate matched with what was listed in the app. And then when I opened the door, there was Crush. And he was there to save the day. He took me to my meeting, and come to find out, he was just an average person. He was getting a medical degree, and he was just looking for a couple extra bucks during the day when he wasn't going to class. He got me to my meeting, my coworkers got to their meeting on time, and we all lived happily ever after. Now, the great thing about this story is not that we made it to our meetings. The great thing about it is I didn't have to solve my problem. Uber and the Uber world solved my problem. The only thing I had to do was cast my intent into the Uber world. I had to say, here I am, here's where I want to go now, and this is the type of car, the type of transportation I want to take. The Uber world came together collectively, and based on my requirements, offered up a service, the best service at that time, to get me from A to B. That's what intent casting is all about. It's about me as a customer focusing in on my problems, and the world offering me the best services and products to meet those requirements. Now, many of you, I'm sure, have heard of Uber. It's a company that's about 4.5 years old. It's growing like crazy. And it isn't just a company about making customers feel good. They're not just taking on intent casting. They've grown a successful business. The company's valued at about $18 billion currently. They do about $10 billion of gross revenue a year, $2 billion of that coming to Uber itself. Intent casting, when done properly, can be an amazing business, and it helps customers from every avenue. Uber is really focused, though, in a bigger economy, what's called the attention economy. Doc Searles, alumnus fellow at Harvard, wrote this book in 2012 called The Attention Economy, and it was a collection of his ideas, including intent casting and various others. And he writes, the attention economy grows around buyers, not sellers. It leverages the simple fact that buyers are the first source of money and that they come ready-made. You don't need advertising to make them. Most customers know they have a problem. They know they have an issue. They know they have a requirement or a need. The challenge comes in is how do you meet that need? Where do they communicate that? And how do they get the best products and services available to meet their intent? I used to work at Boeing in the cabin systems division. We were responsible for all of the technology within the new airplanes behind the flight deck. So everything that we as passengers and the cabin crew would interact with. And the way that we would get a lot of those technologies on the airplane was creating RFPs, requests for proposals. And these documents could be quite extensive at times, discussed all the requirements, all the needs, anything that we thought would be relevant in trying to acquire that technology for the airplane. Doc talks about a personal RFP. Why can't we do the same thing from a customer perspective? Why can't we say, here are my exact requirements? I don't really mind what services or products you currently offer. I know what my need is and what my specific need is. Why don't you put together an offering that meets my need? Again, the Uber example, to go from A to B. I don't care who does it, just get me there. There's a couple other examples of companies that take on this approach. The first one, LinkedIn. I'm sure everyone in this room has a LinkedIn profile or certainly has seen LinkedIn. But LinkedIn allows you to add your skills, your experience, allows you to follow particular leaders, allows you to follow certain companies or even put in postings based on your interest or expertise. But the other thing that LinkedIn allows you to do is to cast your intent of where your career would like to go or where you would like to go with your career. And recruiters are constantly scanning across LinkedIn and seeing if there's a way that some of the opportunities they know about can match up to you as an individual. This isn't an explicit intent. It's actually you creating intent just purely based on who you're following and the content you're putting on LinkedIn. TaskRabbit, very interesting company out of the US. As the name alludes to, they're very focused on tasks. So being able to go onto TaskRabbit, you can put up information, a requirement for a task to be completed. For example, getting your lawn mowed or painting a room or having a package picked up. How that gets fulfilled is not the concern. It's the fact that you're able to put that requirement into the TaskRabbit world, and the world of taskers, those that fulfill tasks, come around and say, you know what, I can fulfill that task. I'm close to you, I can mow that lawn, I have that equipment, whatever it is. Again, the customer focuses on what do they need fulfilled, not how does it get fulfilled. At Quivers, we've taken on the approach from an e-commerce perspective. We figured out that there is sometimes challenges in finding particular products. You go to the brand's website, you go to your favorite forum or blog or charity site, and you may not be able to buy the products that you'd like. So we've said, well, allow customers, allow consumers to purchase products and have the world of Quivers figure out where that gets fulfilled from. So for example, here in Sydney, you might purchase a product from the US, and 10 minutes later, the world of Quivers has figured out that there's a retailer just down the street from you that has that product, and they can come deliver it to you at your door. You can go in store and pick it up, or they can ship it to you and get it to you the next day. The focus of the customer is getting the product. The focus is not where they get it from. The world of Quivers figures out how to best match that need with the most appropriate retailer, whether it's here in Sydney or Singapore or anywhere else in the world. Now you might be thinking, okay, so there's a couple ways from a technology perspective that we're already trying to find intent, right? That we're already trying to match products with people navigating through the internet. And retargeting is one of those particular topics. Paid advertising. You've been onto a particular website, maybe a sporting website, and then you go onto Facebook or another site and you see an advertisement for the site that you were just on. And the big assumption is made there that, hey, because you visited the first site, now you want to purchase a product or a service back to that original site. Studies have shown that click-through rates are as high as 2%, but more like 0.1 to 0.2%. Extraordinarily low. This either means that the ads are being ignored, that those ads simply don't match up to what the customers want, or a combination of the two. Big data. There's a tremendous amount of value in big data, whether you're getting information from one source or 10,000 sources. It paints an amazing picture of what's happened in the past and potentially what can happen in the future. The thing it doesn't do is really figure out what is the intent today. What is the intent now? The fact that I needed a car from a parking lot on a highway in LA and heading up to Santa Monica could never have been figured out with big data, because it was a need that I had right that second. And it may never happen again. That's really what intent casting is about, is the need at that time. Truly understanding what do your customers want based on a scenario or situation that they're in at that moment. And then creating or providing products and services that meet that particular intent. We started Quivers 2 years ago. We've learned, as any good startup, a tremendous amount. We've changed our business model more times than I'd like to discuss. But we've also come about with some amazing lessons learned over that time. And one of them is definitely that intent casting can create huge efficiencies. Just looking at our business model, the fact that we are matching where inventory is at globally close to where those consumers are purchasing products creates a tremendous amount of efficiency, just with shipping costs, for example. Right? Getting the products there quicker, eliminating products coming from the US over to Australia when the product was just down the street. Why not provide that product directly to the consumer? The other thing that we've seen is advantages to the entire ecosystem. When we started Quivers, we knew that local retailers would get excited about it. After all, they're getting additional orders through e-commerce sites that they normally wouldn't have received. What we didn't realize was how it would affect in-store experiences. A lot of consumers that come and use the Quivers site opt to do an in-store pickup. They realize that the product is just down the street for them or near their work. And so they decide to go in-store. That provides a retailer the opportunity to create a relationship, potentially sell additional products, or maybe even start targeting them with marketing initiatives or events. If done properly, intent casting can be a huge advantage to everyone in that ecosystem, though people and companies may have to adapt in order to fit inside of that model. The last area that we've learned, last major area, is continuous feedback, is making sure that the intent was fulfilled correctly and properly. And while I was doing some research, I used Uber a tremendous amount. I'm slightly addicted to the service at this point. And I started talking to a lot of the Uber drivers. And one thing that they came back with was how much the feedback at the end of the ride mattered to them and mattered to the entire experience. One example of this that I heard was that there was a rider that went from the Sydney CBD over to Redfern. He got charged $23 for it. He rated the ride 1 star. Within a few minutes, Uber contacted this rider and said, well, why did you rate this 1 star? And he said, well, because $23 is too much. It's not that long of a distance. Uber did the calculation, figured out based on traffic that the ride should have only been about $15 and refunded the rider $8. And you want to talk about an amazing customer experience, that's pretty incredible. But that is truly what intent casting encompasses. It's not just the upfront, hey, let's fulfill that intent and we're done. But it follows all the way through to, how was your experience? If it wasn't a great experience, let's fix it, and let's make sure that doesn't happen again in the future. Speaking of future, what does it look like for intent casting? Well, I think we're only at the start of the intent casting revolution, shall we call it. There's only a few small processes that have been thus far brought into this intent casting world, Uber being one of them. And at its core, it's pretty basic. The technology is quite advanced, but it's really get me from A to B using ground transportation. That's it. There's a lot of startups that are starting to focus in on these more simple processes and bringing customers at the forefront of that. And we're going to see more and more of that moving forward. Customer loyalty is a really interesting topic. As I mentioned before, I'm getting addicted to Uber. Who on the Uber side, the service provider, is actually providing that to me, whether it's Koresh or someone else, is not really my concern. So my loyalty starts to get toward Uber and not toward a taxi company or a limo service or whatever it is. Because what my focus is that my intent, my problem is solved. And I have confidence that Uber will solve that problem for me. Moving forward, it's going to be pretty interesting to see how service providers map into that world where there's still loyalty, but still getting the advantages of this intent casting type environment. And tackling complex problems. As I mentioned, getting from A to B, ground transportation, though from a technology standpoint, very complex. From a business model perspective, relatively straightforward. As we start looking at more complex processes in finance, insurance, global travel, where multiple businesses need to come together and talk to each other and figure out how do we map up to that intent. I want to go to Italy. When I get there, I want to stay at a particular type of resort and eat at a certain type of restaurant and go to particular tourist activities. That's going to take a lot of companies working together to try and meet that intent and meet it quickly. I'll leave you with this question. How will you capture intent? Any business that you're in should be focused on that. It's more than just customer experience. It's really understanding, completely agnostic of your services or products, what exactly do your customers want? It can not only drive that experience, but it can drive product development and so much more inside your business. Thank you very much for your time. I'll be around for the rest of the day, so if you have any questions, I'd love to hear them. And you can otherwise get a hold of me at ruben@quivers.com. Thanks.
Thanks, Ruben.
No worries.
Am I live? So, okay, we have a couple of questions for
Great.
you. We grabbed them right off Twitter, this thing. When you say intent casting, to what extent are you basing this on data, or to what extent do you have to actually create a channel to interact with the customer?
Sure. A huge part of it is definitely the there and then, right? Understanding what your customers want at that moment of need. I think where we're going to head with a lot of this as well is understanding more about the customer over time, and based on that learning and building a profile of that customer, then being able to offer even more relevant information, more relevant services and products based on the moment that the intent is being cast. So in other words, with Uber, the fact that I every single time use a particular type of car and I need that service immediately, that can become part of my profile. Even the fact that I travel to LA quite a bit, that can become part of my profile, and therefore the next time that I need to have a car service, that can be used to make it more relevant.
And imagining a world where our every need can be instantly met. Is that not sort of going down that same path where we become more and more impatient? And
I think we are.
Waiting used to be an important skill, and so living in a world where people want this instant gratification, become more and more needy in the here and now. Is there any big thinking that's going on behind that, and how do you deal with that?
I think it's inevitable. I mean, we are all wanting things now, here, immediately. I have to get to my meeting. I don't have time. I don't have patience. I think companies need to adhere to that. It's not the fact that companies can just, or businesses can just completely ignore, hey, my customers want something and they want it now and they want it in a particular way, that'll just happen, right? Companies need to come together and say, well, this is what our clients expect, what our customers expect, and start adapting their businesses for that.
And one final one.
Sure.
Now, Uber is based on the idea that people can sort of meet the needs of other people. So it's sort of a consumer-based platform.
Right.
When you talk about connecting brands to customer needs, who's your business model ultimately catering for? Is that, is it sort of driven by what the brands want, or is that driven by what the consumers want? And I'm tying that back to Maria's talk earlier. If you want to build a community around that, community is the people, right? So how do you strike that balance?
No, absolutely. You know, and as I mentioned, we're still doing a tremendous amount of learning with our business model, but what we're trying to do is really ensure that consumers can get the products they want. And one of the big learnings that we've seen with that is retailers start understanding what products do consumers want in particular markets. So for example, I know here, I've lived here in Australia for the last 6 years, there's definitely times when there's certain products not available in this market, but potentially in the US or UK or other markets. And so being able to see that, hey, there's a lot of orders for these products headed to the US, these retailers can start saying, well, I want to start carrying those goods. Obviously, there's a demand locally for it. Therefore, that is the intent of the consumers in this market. Let's start bringing those products in store and providing an in-store experience for purchasing.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.